Hey guys, in the next few weeks here, I'm going to be sharing my free video workshop about the most important things you can do right now to start laying the foundation for your future success. We just finished recording and I am psyched to share this with you. Just a quick teaser, the first video is going to cover how to create a personal vision statement for your life. This workshop really is covering some of the most powerful stuff that I've learned over the last few years, so I think you guys are really going to love it. To get access to the workshop once it's live, just head over to millennialmm.com/join and subscribe. I'll see you guys over there.
I think it's key about putting yourself in the right place at the right time and creating as many opportunities as possible. So for myself, I was always trying to make myself, I would say, known on campus as the guy who wants to start ventures. And I was always working on little side projects. But because of that, there was these opportunities that came to me because people were aware of my ambitions and what I was trying to do.
Hello there, friends, and welcome to the show. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Brian Friedman in the podcast. Brian is a fellow millennial and an entrepreneur who took his business from an idea to a multi-million-dollar exit in less than 3 years. In that time, while he built his company Looped, he raised over $2.5 million in capital, grew a team of more than 10 employees, and opened offices in San Francisco and Taiwan. He is also the author of the upcoming book, Takeaways, Secret Truths from Leading a Startup, and now serves as VP of Digital Innovation at Eventry, a leading enterprise cloud-based event management software company. Brian, welcome to the Mastermind, my friend. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into your journey. It sounds very synergistic with what the show is all about. But before we get straight into how you built that business, I love to understand where people came from, what got them interested in entrepreneurship and where they caught the proverbial bug. So would you mind just giving us a brief overview of where your entrepreneurial journey began?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up outside Boston, and my father is actually an entrepreneur. He started a retail trade show company, and they also did research. So you can kind of think of something like Gartner or Forrester, where what they would do is they would have these big conferences and a newsletter, and companies such as Walmart and Sam's Club and Amazon, they would subscribe to it to learn about the upcoming trends. And his team, what they would do is they would take all the information from that year and look at all the technologies upcoming, and they predict what the trends would be for, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years. And then they would have industry leaders come in and talk about it at their events. So growing up, really from the age of 5, I started going to my father's trade shows all over the world, in Chicago, Japan, London. And I really got to see what it was like to run a business. On the flip side, my grandparents, my mom's side, are actually from Ireland. And they immigrated from Ireland to New York. And from there, they really had to use their entrepreneurial or side hustle to really create a foundation for their family. And my grandfather, he started as a construction worker, and then he actually worked his way up to building all the sets for SNL, which is kind of a cool, fun fact. But kind of growing up from that environment, having seen what my parents had done with their business, and my grandfather always encouraging me to be insightful and curious and build things with my hands, it really set me up where I knew one day I was going to build something that it wasn't just going to be a product, but it was going to solve a solution and make our world a better place.
Nice. And so when was Looped your first entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah, so Looped was my first official venture. When I was younger, I did a company called My Mailing Associates with my father, where we actually would take all the contacts lists from all of our friends and family, and we'd make personalized cards for them. And that way, when a holiday was coming up, they didn't have to worry about it. We basically stuff it, send it. And that was one of my first times where I had to go through formulating a business plan, creating a revenue model, talking to customers, doing sales. And that was when I was, probably 12 or 13 years old.
Nice. And so then where did the idea for Looped come into play?
Yeah, so I was looking for three things really before starting a company. So the first thing was I was looking to do a physical product that also had software involved. So like a smart device. That's just because I studied engineering and I was fascinated with physical products. The second thing was I was looking for a really good co-founder who had the software background to really build a robust product. And then the third thing was I was looking for an investor that really believed in what I was doing and wanted to help us get it out there into the world. So long story short, I went to a program called Draper University in San Mateo in Silicon Valley, led by Tim Draper, who's a famous venture capitalist from DFJ Ventures. And he's famous for coming up with the concept of really viral. So he invested in Hotmail back in the day and gave them a recommendation of putting a link on the bottom of every email. And from there, that's what took off. And then a lot of other companies went off that platform. So at Draper University, I wasn't actually trying to come up with this idea for Looped, but I read a blog post about a product called the Buddy Cup, where Budweiser did a campaign with different beer glasses. And when you tap them together, you exchange Facebook information. So I came up with this idea during one of our workshops in Draper University where I had an idea for a wristband. And the idea was that what if we had this natural element that could control your online presence? So rather than millennials being stuck in their phone all day, they could take advantage of those connections of social media, but also really build their human connections. So we called our first concept called the Buddy Band. And it was a wristband where when you shake hands, you could exchange LinkedIn information. If you'd high five, for example, you could exchange social information such as Instagram and Snapchat. From there, I had actually two other students in the program say, who were the most technical students by far. And they already had a few companies behind them. They said, Brian, we really like your idea. Can we work with you on it? So I had the physical/software product. My co-founders kind of fell in my lap. It was perfect. They were great guys. And then third, Tim Draper loved the idea. So after the program ended, he picked us as the one company to fund. He ended up giving us $50,000 and free living and free office as part of the deal, which is one of the hardest things when getting a startup off the ground. So the fact we had all three of those, I said, this is too good to be true. And we all dove right in and started Looped.
Yeah, that's incredible. That worked out so well. And so how'd you kind of get involved in that program in the beginning? How did you find out? Because I know what people will be thinking is, oh, that's great, but you had this lucky opportunity. But I'm sure there's more than that involved getting into the Draper University program. So how did you discover that? How did you go about getting involved there?
Yeah, so I'm the guy who's always knocking on the door, calling people up, sending emails. I'm not afraid to reach out and say hello and make a connection. And I think that's really important. So for myself, when I first went to Lehigh University, I actually wanted to build action sports products. I was a snowboarder and wakeboarder, and I wanted to make new innovative snowboards out of really unique materials. And it was one of the reasons I was inspired to go to Lehigh. However, when I got there, they said in order to use the machine shop, I had to be a junior. And I didn't want to wait 2 to 3 years to start building my products. So I went to the head of the machine shop and said, okay, is there another way where I can get access and training to all these machines? And he said the only way would be if I started a club. However, at Lehigh, freshmen never started clubs. But given that, my friend and I, we said, let's go for it. So we went through the whole entire process of talking to the club committee and getting several of the key members to vote off in it. We started the Create Club, which was a technical startup club. And we then got access to all the machines. It was awesome. So because of that, actually, my co-founder in the club, his father, and actually, so one of my fraternity brothers' fathers, they actually were a host family for my co-founder. So I was on vacation with them, and they had known from my friend Percy, who helped me in the club, that I was really into startups and I was really interested in entrepreneurial ventures. So Fred, who's the father, he got an email from Silicon Valley Angels, which is a top firm out in Silicon Valley. And they said that there's this new program called Draper University. There's an open spot. and let us know if you know anyone who may be a good fit. So he reached out to me and he said, hey, Brian, I think you'd be a great fit for this. And you may be thinking, well, okay, that's great. I knew this guy and he knew that I was entrepreneurial and it all worked out. But the thing was that I think it's key about putting yourself in the right place at the right time and creating as many opportunities as possible. So for myself, I was always trying to make myself, I would say, known on campus as the guy who wants to start ventures. And I was always working on little side projects. Like I had one project where we created, I was actually sick of looking at my laptop when doing like Zoom and video calls and having everyone's eyes not looking at each other. It was just this really odd feeling. So we actually put a camera in the middle of the screen and hit it where you couldn't see it. And that way, when you're actually video chatting with other people, you felt like it was a portal, like you were there with them. So we were always working on all these different side ventures. But because of that, there was these opportunities that came to me because people were aware of my ambitions and what I was trying to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that so many of us get caught up in waiting for the perfect idea or waiting for the right time to do something. But you can't just sit on your hands and idly wait there, like you said, because it's oftentimes taking action on something that leads you to what ultimately is going to be your big project. And you hone your ideas as you go along too. So what you start with may be nowhere near what you end with, or it could be a totally 180-degree turn, and you could be working on a totally different project that really changes your life. But the key is just getting started and, like you said, putting yourself in the right place at the right time and giving yourself the opportunity for those the chance for those opportunities to come along.
Yeah, like for myself, I said, okay, how can I put myself in the right place at the right time? My community at Lehigh, it was a good community, but it was in Pennsylvania, right? There was a different mentality. Growing up in the East Coast, everyone said, you need to write a business plan. Here's the structure. It's going to be 20 to 30 pages. You need a financial forecast for the next 2 to 5 years. And this was a lot to think about when, let's say, you're anywhere from age 14 to 22 or even older, and you've never started a company, or your company hasn't gotten off the ground, so you're not sure which direction it's going to go in. Like you said, as your company grows, the market's going to change. The reactions to the product of what you expected may be different. So you may pivot the actual product. And for myself, I said, okay, I need to be in San Francisco for at least 1 to 2 years. And I knew if I was there that maybe in a cafe, I'd bump into someone. Maybe if I was at a meetup event, I would meet an investor. And that was the case. However, I'd say for this show, you don't have to be in San Francisco to meet people. When you're building a company, you really need to be heads down. And if you're a product guy, you want to be building your product 24/7. If you're a salesperson, you want to make sure that you're hitting all of your numbers for your dials and your meetings and your conversions. And when you need the opportunity to meet people for partnerships or for fundraising, or let's say even growing talent to have the right culture on your team, at that time, you can fly out to somewhere like San Francisco, like you were saying, you did for a few days, or you can go to New York for a few days. And the fact that you're only there for a few days, you can create this urgency where now it's important to say, hey, by the way, I'm here for the next 2 to 3 days. Here are some times that I'd love to meet with you. And I do that all the time. And a lot of times people who would have never gone back to me said, hey, you know what? Sure, let's meet for coffee for 10 to 15 minutes. And the most important aspect is just, taking that leap, not being afraid, and just reaching out and saying, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my mission. And do you want to help me?
Yeah, that's so funny. And it's true that it's often easier to meet with somebody when you're in their city for like 1 or 2 days than it is to find time to connect with somebody in your own city. Because when there's just an open calendar invite and it's like, hey, when works for you? It's so much easier to push it off or push it to the next month or whatever versus, oh, okay, you're here for 24 hours. Yeah, sure, I can make it work and fit into that schedule. And it's just a funny phenomenon. I'm sure there's some more psychological reason behind it, but it does work. When it comes down to coming up with the idea and then really honing what that business idea looks like, I'm curious to get your advice. And I'll use myself for an example in this podcast. If somebody goes back and listens to some of the early episodes, I was all over the map and the clarity was clearly not there. And fortunately, in a format like podcasting, you have the opportunity to iterate and get better. And there's really not as much risk. But when you're starting a business or startup, it's that you do have to have a bit more clarity when you're going to launch and when you're creating this thing and you're writing up your business plan. So I'd love to get your feedback on what advice you might have for people getting clarity or honing in on their business idea.
Yeah, so I actually have a business course that I've created. It's my 10 essential steps to business growth. And it's for startups and entrepreneurs where it may be their first time or they want a more systematic approach to finding really what the right product and service is for the market. Like you said, it could be a podcast, it could be a video series, it could be a restaurant, it could be a software venture, it could really be anything. But for myself, growing up on the East Coast, and once again, like I said, at age 12, 13, writing all these business plans with my father, it was one of those things where it seemed like a lot of work and a pain. However, it was really nice for sharing a roadmap to investors, to friends, to your teams. Kind of says, hey, here's my vision. Here's where I want to go. So the first step that I always focused on was really looking at, okay, what are the problems that I want to solve? So I'd pick a market that I was interested in that had a big, we call TAM, a total addressable market. It has a lot of spend. It can be a big business, but you also need to be passionate about that market. And for myself, I wanted to travel the world, and I also wanted to experience these live exhibitions and meet amazing people and form this community. So for me, that was events. I loved user conferences and activations and festivals. So really finding the best market. Once you've determined what that market is, determining, okay, who would be the end user and create a persona for them. So for myself, I was selling to event marketers at these software business companies such as like a Dropbox or a Salesforce, and we'd create a persona about them. And we'd say, okay, my name is Ann. I'm an event manager at Dropbox, and my problem is that I don't know the value of my event after it's over, or something simple like that. And I've done this exercise with a few friends who started companies where we'd say, after we have the persona, okay, let's pick out the top 3 problems that person may have. And let's now get rid of problem number 2 and problem number 3. So we're only going to have one problem left. Now let's break up that first problem into 5 more subproblems and really try to get to the nitty-gritty detail of, okay, what's the core of that problem that's causing it? And from there, we then rank the 1 to 5 sub-problems, and then we get rid of problems 2 to 5. And we'd be left with this one problem. And what I call that one problem is that's your problem statement for your minimum viable product. So if you're able to solve that product simply and you make their life easier, then that is your first version of the product, is something that they're willing to buy. So I tell everyone, before making this very expensive or complicated venture experience, make a really simple, focused, minimum viable product. And then from there, you can start working with a few of these different companies or customers, and what I like to call a POC, a proof of concept, where you're just kind of validating it before you scale it out to the market. From that, you can identify your unique selling proposition. What makes you different from the competition? And once your customers, they say, okay, this USP, this unique selling proposition is unique to you. It's something that I'm willing to buy, and there's others out there just like me. That's when you can scale it. And at that point, it's really important to talk about, okay, how do I position my product in the market? And how do I make sure that I have the right messaging where people understand my brand, my vision, my mission behind it, and they're also not confused. There's a simple statement that says, here's the problem that it solves. And after that, here is what it is and here's how it works. So those are a lot of steps. And anyone listening to the show, if you're more interested, I have templates for all of these steps. I have examples. I have real stories for all of them. And it's a really easy way where if you grind it out within, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, you can validate a business concept and then start growing it.
Yeah, no, that's super legit and probably saves people years of their life instead of going down the route of creating a full scale business and just to realize that it wasn't well thought out or the market isn't ready for it. So that's really cool. Where can people check out that course if they want to learn more about that?
Yes, actually on my website for the book, takeawaysbook.com, top right, there's a button that says take the course. And if you click on that, you can access the course. What I'll do is I'll actually send a link out afterwards that you can probably add in the show notes where I'll have a discounted link for that course for all the listeners.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely have that posted up in the show notes. I also wanted to talk to you about the early days. So when you were really starting to get into it with Looped, you went through Draper University. You had some startup capital, you had your co-founders, the space, all of that settled. Now you're ready to get going. You're ready to really start grinding. Where did you guys get started? What were the first things that you really went to tackle first?
Yeah, so there was a few different things. And with our investors, we created these benchmarks every 3 months. And it was one of those things where we also wanted to make sure that we weren't becoming delusional. We weren't wasting our times. So we would say, okay, every 3 months, here are new goals. And if we hit it, cool, we'll get access to more funding, or we'll basically double down as co-founders. If not, then we might take a step back. So we also wanted to make sure that we weren't being naive and, let's say, stuck in this vision for a few years where everyone else is like, what are these guys doing? We wanted to be receptive to the market. So the first things we started on, the first was creating this wristband, an actual prototype that worked. So we used some funding to hire another firmware engineer who actually helped us create the printed circuit board and helped us create this gesture pattern where we had all these different gestures and different ways you could shake your hand, and it would then register and connect to a mobile app. So we then started making also a mobile app where using Bluetooth, it could find people nearby. And in 2013, Bluetooth, it was a newer thing for iOS devices. It really just opened up at that time. So we were one of the first Bluetooth apps on the store. And that really helped us validate and get a lot of customers at the beginning. From there, we also wanted to get our first customer to really test out the POC. And like I said, do these user case studies where we're identifying who our persona is. So after the first 3 months, we had our prototype working. We had a basic version of the mobile app. And we had interested customers who were talking to us. And that was kind of our initial focus.
Very, very nice. And so I'm sure that you guys ran into your handful of challenges and maybe even failures in those early days and throughout the life cycle of your experience with the company. Would you be able to share a story or two about a time where you guys really hit a wall and how you overcame that and what you learned from that process?
Yeah, so at the beginning, actually, from the very start, we had a lot of people say, your product, the wristband would be great for events. However, we had this bigger vision of creating this offline network for people around the world. However, we knew that, and what I mean by that is we wanted to actually focus on third world countries and other places where they didn't have internet and use our Bluetooth protocol to connect communities where they could connect on social media and also message with one another. And we said, really to validate this as a first stage of our company, let's start in cities. So we opened Google Maps. We started looking at places where people would be together since everyone had to get this wristband to connect. And we found theme parks, we found sports stadiums, we found event centers, and we started focusing and reaching out to a lot of these different markets. And the first thing was we weren't focused. We were saying that we were a product for theme parks, we were a product for supermarkets, but we weren't saying we're a platform for you to build on our technology. So for the first few months, we definitely struggled with, I would say, almost like a company identity. And we started getting some traction in the event space, and everyone said, that's a great fit. And then also, since my family came from that space, we had some connections. So it'd be a really good way to test out early. So what we did was we said, okay, we're going to double down on a single industry. And we said, okay, we're now connection technology for events. And that really refined who we were and what we did to everyone else. As for, I'd say, a failure with that. So the wristband is more of a concept for a festival, right? Where with a wristband, if you've ever been to a music festival, you may use it to scan into a certain area of the festival. You may use it to buy a drink or some food. It's usually for payment or cashless payments and also access control. So our very first concept was creating really the world's smartest and most contextual business card. We wanted to make sure that this piece of technology was like an endless business card that would record where you met the person and interests that you had in common, and immediately could show up on your mobile app so that you could follow up with them after. So we started using this at events, and what we realized was that attendees, they wanted to make sure their check-in experience was really fast. They just wanted to walk in, get their badge, and then go explore the experience. And putting on a second device in something that was a new behavior, it was kind of a pain. Not everyone wanted to wear a wristband. We kept getting this feedback from a lot of people. So we started going to more events, and we looked around, and we realized that the one action and one behavior that everyone was used to was wearing a lanyard that had a badge attached to it. And we said, okay, what if we change the form factor where our first version, rather than a wristband with gestures, was actually a sticker, kind of this small hardware device that would either stick on or clip onto a lanyard. And that way, all an attendee had to do was the same behavior they're used to. And in order to exchange contact information, they would press a button on the device we called the smart tag, or the loot badge at first. And with that badge, if both people pressed the button, a light would go green and automatically their phone would vibrate, and they would get a connection in their mobile app. And once we did that, it really started taking off. And we were able then to change the form factor. And for different use cases, if people were only using it, let's say for check-in and check-out of a certain session or a zone in a physical space, then they didn't have to press the button. So for that, we'd have smaller tags that could then stick on and be hidden on the badge. However, they knew that it wasn't just tracking them, it was their personal assistant. So throughout the day, they could get journey and notes about where they went and who they met. So I'd say, kind of to recap that, it's really important at first to be focused, to know, okay, what you're going after and what the problems you're solving are. And then understanding, okay, who is the person that I'm providing the solution for and what's their behavior? Because if we kept going down a road of trying to give all these different markets a wristband, it wouldn't have worked out. It would have been kind of I'd say, a bundle of different solutions that wasn't really fit for the right market. And it would have been more of a technology platform, which was fine, but that wasn't what we were going for. So those are two examples of times where I'd say early on in the days of kind of validating our product and our business, where we had some assumptions and they didn't really come out the way we expected.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you guys were able to get focused that quickly, but also make that pivot, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there who would be really stuck on that idea of the wristband, because as you explained it early on, like that's kind of the core concept, is you have these gestures that tie into the platform, and that drives a lot of it. And that's just this really innovative, cool idea. But the fact that people weren't adopting that product based on the fact that it would have to be they'd have to learn a new behavior. It would slow them down. It would change things that they've been doing for years. Recognizing that and being able to pivot there, I'm sure was key to your success. So I love that you guys had that ability to pivot. One other thing I would love to hear about is if you could hop in a time machine and go back and chat with your younger self. Is there one piece of advice that, say, Brian, who is just getting into Draper University, is there one piece of advice you'd give to yourself at that stage in the journey?
Yeah, so I'd probably tell myself to stay focused. I get really excited by ideas, and a lot of times when you're working on so many things at once, you can't execute and get it done. And myself, when I was actually at Draper University, I was working on this. I had another idea where it was 99 designs for physical products, where a company like a Target could create a design challenge for, let's say, a new piece of furniture. I had another product that I was designing since I studied mechanical engineering and material science. I was making a smart water bottle top that could mist water. So that way, basically, bikers who want to basically cool down when it wastes water. And I was trying to basically license my IP to Gatorade. So I was doing a lot of these little side hustles, but nothing was really gaining traction. And I think the fact that I got these 3 things that fell in place and I said, okay, let's do loops, let's make this happen. It really followed that more focused trend. But then once again, you saw I got really unfocused of all these different markets. So I'd say with myself, if I went back in time, I'd tell myself to be more focused. And then I would also tell myself to make stronger relationships in the industry and partner with people from the start. For us, we were kind of arrogant and we said, okay, our technology is way better than everyone else's. Everyone else is so old school. Everyone's going to love us. And what we realized was there's more than that. A lot of these clients had actually been working for years with these customers. They wanted us to integrate with them. And because we had come off as kind of saying that we're this competitor to everyone, they didn't want to partner with us. And it took time to then work that over. So I'd say from the beginning, definitely identify the companies that have scale who can help you get into the market, and make sure that before you reach out to them that you're focused and that you're ready to execute.
Yeah, I love that. And on the focused piece, man, you must know me, because I struggle with that, and I'm sure many entrepreneurial-minded people do, with just having all sorts of awesome ideas, but just getting distracted away from the core one that you should be focusing on. So I love that you bring that up. Brian, so people who want to learn more about you, who want to check out the book, where would you point them to get more info?
Yeah, so you can go to takeawaysbook.com. That has a link to the Amazon. If you go on to Amazon and search Takeaways Brian Friedman, it will also pop up. And then if you want to add me on Instagram, I'm Brian M. Friedman. And feel free to follow and message me. I'd love to basically hear your story and see how it can help.
I love it. Well, thank you, Brian. This was an awesome conversation. I'm excited to learn more about what you cover in the book. And this was an awesome chat and very insightful. So I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.